Good Thursday evening, and welcome to episode number 2 of This and That, the podcast. I'm your host, Joe Gilloway, joined by my co-host, Bill Bostic. And tonight we will delve into Lower Paxton Township government with a focus on the Board of Supervisors. There have been some issues lately over the past probably handful of months now, with some supervisors, some faces on the board changing, and I think that people really want to know what's going on, and we're going to do our best to kind of shed some light as to what has been transpiring on the board and some other things too. So we're going to be joined by a concerned community member, Steve Blaine here as well. So the three of us are going to kind of take the reins and guide you through the next 45 minutes to an hour on the show here. So This and That, the podcast, is brought to you by Rickabah's Electric and Team PA AAU Basketball. We're up to 2 sponsors. Rickabah's Electric started with us right out of the gate last week, Dan Rickabah, and we just heard from Greg Cavoli from Team PA AAU Basketball. He also owns the Enterprise Rent-A-Car on North Mountain Road, just off the I-81 exchange. So these are local families. Kids went to Central Dauphin schools or still do. So please, and Dan Rickabah is my electrician. He's done a boatload of work on my house over the last 2 or 3 years.
Hey, Joe.
So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm actually been a past customer of Enterprise Cars because of my wife had a few mishaps in the car. We had to find a rental, so I always had good service there.
Good. Yeah, I had to rent a car one time, and I had great service as well. So that's good to hear. So yeah, support Rickabah's Electric. Team PA AAU Basketball, if you have any kids that play basketball, and Enterprise Rent-A-Car on North Mountain Road. And we're going to also encourage you to watch episode 1 if you missed it last week. We talked about Coons Pool, and we had Erica Baylor on, and she was a kind of a Coons Pool guru. She's a member of the board out there. She has been a manager for, I think, 14 years, swim team coach. So Erica was really good at helping to inform us and you, the viewers, last week on what's going on with Coons Pool. And they are opening, by the way. So if the last you heard is that they're not, the new news is that Coons Pool will be opening, doing their best to get open by, I guess the normal opening time would be Memorial Day weekend. So, and just a disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the participants who state them and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or positions held by This and That, the podcast, as an entity or by the sponsors who support the show. So anyway, let's, guys, Steve, thanks for joining us.
Yes,
I'm not gonna thank you, Bill, because I think you're kind of my regular guest host. It didn't take long, or no, not guest host, co-host. I'm sorry, I didn't mean guest. I meant co. If you'll take on that role. Bill and
as long as I can carve out the time, it should be fine.
I meant co. I didn't mean guest. Bill and I worked together for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, right? With Town Gazette.
Yeah, I think it was around 3 years.
Yeah, and really had a great time, and I think we did a pretty good job of service to the community. And so anyway, we're going to try to make this kind of like the People's Podcast. If you all have kind of topics that you'd like to look into or have us look into, please let us know, and we will do our best to make those topics a reality. So let's get started here, and I'm just going to kind of set the table for you guys and let's talk about the breadth and the scope of what we're dealing with here in Lower Paxton Township. It has been a local self-governing entity for 258 years. Okay, I'm just trying to give some of these people that may not know, an idea of the size and, again, the scope and the breadth of Lower Paxton Township. Covers 28 square miles, population of roughly 55,000, most populous municipality in Dauphin County, 17th most populous municipality in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So there are inherent challenges, guys, that are part and parcel with governing a municipality of that size, infrastructure-wise and population-wise. We have no axe to grind here, no political witch hunt. There's not any kind of partisan attack going on here. We just know that taxpayers are frustrated. They feel underrepresented, underinformed, that there is a lack of transparency, and that no one is going to bat for them as they're elected to do. So there have been 4 Board of Supervisor resignations in the last 3+ months. Norm Zumas, Robin Lindsay, Chris Judd, and Paul Navarro. And there's nothing normal about this. Probably not unprecedented, where a lot of people will step down either at the same time or close to the same time. But things like this do not occur in times of cohesion and harmony amongst board members, paid township employees, and taxpayers. Something's not right here. So, Bill, I'm going to bring you in now. I know you did some homework. I didn't mean to
no problem.
To suck up all the oxygen in the room here, but I just wanted the people at home to know that that there is an issue and or are issues, and that LP is not easy to run, is it?
Well, it's not, because it's actually more people here in Lower Paxton Township than we have in the city of Harrisburg.
Correct.
And not to get into the weeds, but there's different kinds of local or municipal governments in Pennsylvania, and we're what's called a second-class township. And when you check into the information on that, they're usually rural or very small municipalities. Lower Paxton Township is the 3rd largest second-class township.
Okay.
And one of the problems we have that the state actually hasn't addressed, that when you get this large, and we have a five-person board of supervisors, okay, they're just part-time, essentially near volunteer people. They get paid $5,000 a year. They have the option of getting group health insurance. And for that, they have to attend 3 meetings a month, and then other things potentially that comes up that they need to attend to, answer emails, address upset residents and all that kind of thing. And what makes it tough is if you're part-time, you're not in the township office, you're not in the public works department. You're not going to have time to really spend a lot of time and do direct supervision. You got to really depend on your manager when you get to this high, as your key person. So
you're talking about the township manager, right?
Township manager, yeah. So that's really the setup. If you're a supervisor, you're doing a public service, and so yeah, for Lower Paxton Township hasn't had this kind of turnaround. I mean, very rarely. We've had a very stable board throughout the years until right now is when problems started to show up late last year.
And Bill, to add to that, Mr. Jeff Clare just chimed in here. Public Works Director resigned. Economic Development Director resigned.
Okay.
This isn't like doom and gloom here, but there's something not right about with all this turnover and some people resigning under distress, not just because it's time to, walk away into the sunset and go sit on the beach. They weren't planning on resigning, and now they have. So let's bring Steve in here. Steve, you've lived in the township, I think, your whole life, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I just want to qualify you as, that you belong on the show and you know what you're talking about.
58 years I've lived here.
Okay. All right. And what got you involved? I know I saw you a few weeks ago at a meeting in person. And I know that you go to a lot of meetings. And what kind of motivated you to get started showing up at township board meetings?
Well, beginning last May, we have an ongoing sewer project, stormwater, water project in our neighborhood.
And you live in Paxtonia? I'm sorry to interrupt. You're kind of in the Paxtonia area?
It's called Meadowbrook. Meadowbrook. It sits right off of, right behind Paxtonia Elementary School, kind of off of Jonestown Road. Okay. And it's a pretty big project. However, the project's been going on for 3 years. And it got to the point where the roads were becoming almost unpassable. Sidewalks, it wasn't safe. Sidewalks were not done. You couldn't walk on the sidewalks. And just some basic services needed to be done. And as talking with the residents, I've lived here for 20 years, plus years in my home here. We were all in agreement that, some of this minor stuff could be getting done. So we began to attend the meetings at the beginning of last May. and immediately we were met with resistance, with almost kind of an attitude like we should just be happy that we're getting this stuff done for free, and
So
it
you
just
were
wasn't
happy though.
a good.
It wasn't a case that you didn't appreciate that they were doing the work, right?
No,
You just
no,
wanted
no. It's
kind
not,
of some
we're appreciative.
correspondence.
We could, but we were running thin. I mean, the roads were,
Right.
like I said, it's just destroying your cars. So we proceeded to continue going to the meetings, and again met with a lot of resistance, a lot of just dysfunctionality from the board and from Mr. Gutshaw. He just was
The
just
manager.
the township manager.
Yeah.
So we got Miss Lindsay involved, the township manager, supervisor at the time. She was great, very helpful. Tried to do all she could for us. We took some of our own steps. We did a request to write no on the contract, and did some research on that. Me and another citizen here, John Packer. We found that there could be some enforcement here to get this job done, because we were telling them that it wasn't going to get done. Well, again, we met with resistance, and we met a lot from the supervisors at the time. Some of the ones that have since resigned, very resistant, because we were kind of going after Mr. Gutshaw on this, because he should know the contract. And some of the meetings he went to, he had no idea. He was unprepared, didn't know the contract. And I understand, Bill, it's a big township, and
Right.
It's always been a big township, and it's always been growing. And for years, we had a township manager that was in control of the situation. And
that was George Wolf. He was here for 28 years.
And it ran really smooth. And now we have this ongoing problem. And and I don't want to take credit for it, but as we continue to go to the meetings all through August, September, some of the meetings got pretty hostile with the supervisors as they continued to resist, especially Mr. Judd and Mr. Navarro.
Hey, Steve, what were they resisting?
They just were not helpful, saying that, it's going to get done. It's going to get done. And we were like, the contract's not going to get done. We're telling you now, we live there. We see what's going to happen. Well, this is all we can do. And, instead of just say, hey, we're going to look into this. We're going to get aggressive. We're going to try to get your road safe, your sidewalk safe. And, it was funny. The meeting in mid-October, we said, this is unsafe. This is absolutely unsafe. You're not doing your job. And they made a big push to get all the sidewalks done, so the kids, at least passable, so the kids could have trick or treat.
This neighborhood, just to kind of, I'll give you my opinion of it, because I drove through there while this was all going on.
Yeah.
And it looked like an area where you wouldn't be supposed to drive. You know what I'm saying? If anybody understands what I'm saying, like there should have been a cone there or a do not enter. And that's how you had to drive through the neighborhood.
Like some road was stone. It was just bad shape.
So
Steve, I got a question for you, Steve. Is this the contractor? Is it Doley?
Yes, it is Doley.
Okay. And you said you saw the meeting on this past Tuesday. They had problems with Doley on another project right now. So the way those projects are set up, I mean, they have to accept the lowest.
The past meeting, they were talking about our contract. Still,
that was your contract.
Yeah, because now they gave them a drop dead date of May 15th, and Doley. And now this has been a year now that we've been fighting with them.
Okay.
And Doley wants to extend it another 6 weeks to the end of June.
Okay.
That's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
And the reason why we live here, we don't see the work getting done. We don't see the equipment here. We don't see the people here working. And, we have lived, with this. And then outside of, there's other things like the dust, the dirt. Maybe that's getting a little bit. But when your house is covered with dust and dirt, some of these people have to have their house power washed.
Well, beyond Robin Lindsay, did you see any other staff members come out there?
Robin Lindsay was, and she got, she got vilified for helping us.
Okay.
She was, and that's where this really started, because she began to be resistant with the other supervisors at the meetings, because she was out helping us to do all she could to bring the problem to light. And, you see the writing on the table, the dysfunctionality of all the supervisors. And then towards the end, I must say, I'm not taking credit for it, but you can see Mr. Zumas, he checked out. He was like, he had nothing to say, because it was getting very hostile. Chris Judd was taking up the fight, especially to defend Mr. Gutshaw. And we were like trying to explain that this is your guy. He's the guy who needs to be out there. And Mr. Gutshaw has never even come out to the property. I bet you he had never even come out here. And I mean, I know he has people here, but he should have made to come out and say, understands. Yeah. Now, in Mr. Gutshaw's defense here recently, he has come to the table, has realized that we have a legitimate complaint, that there is some time to start enforcing this contract, but a little too late at this point in time.
Right.
So let's talk about, and Bill, I'm going to give it back to you here, but that's just one example of something that's going on or has gone on recently in the township that residents, taxpayers don't feel has been addressed suitably, properly. The other one that's been going on for decades is the compost facility. Okay, we don't need to do a deep dive into that. I don't know enough about it to dive too deep into it. But
can I just chip in on that quick, Joe? Again, they've been coming for months about this compost facility. Yeah. People at high plates,
right?
And instead of having the township manager having some type of study done, some type of information, nothing, zero from it.
They are. I think they have one study in process. It's taking a while. They talked about that on Tuesday. So there's something going on, but it's been.
I think that's in regards to the park they're going to build there.
Yeah,
there has been. This has been going on for decades, a lot of decades. Hodges Heights. The neighborhood.
But even the last meeting, I guess they're applying for a new permit through the state to keep that facility open. Right. And never one time notified, it's almost a sneaky thing they pulled out, and never one time notified the people of that area up there that was the plan.
Yeah, that seems to be, besides the issue itself and the facility supposedly, and I believe that it has caused a lot of bad air, again, like you said, Steve, the houses get filled with the dust and bad smell and a lot of equipment, noisy vehicles in and out. But the residents have just kind of been ignored for a long, long time. And, but Bill, I think you're right that they finally said we need to try to make something happen here, right? That was 2 meetings ago.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the reasons they're doing that, most likely, is that the people in that area of the township, this is the southern end of the township off of Union Deposit Road on the very southern end, they started coming to the meetings and voicing their concern. And so far, I believe Alan McCormick has actually been on site trying to do some things. So they're getting some attention now, but I guess it's a long time coming.
Can we shift gears here, because this is something that I had kind of jotted down. I wanted to address, and it might be a good time now before we go any further.
Okay.
The method by which these vacated seats are filled.
Yeah.
Okay. There have been 4 seats. Have they all been filled now? No, three of the 4.
Three of them have been.
Now, I full disclosure, I put my name in. I think for Robin Lindsay.
Robin Lindsay, yeah.
Yeah, I did not, of course, get the win, but the way they went about it with me, and I think there were either 16 or 17 candidates at that time. It was about a month ago. It was a one-on-one, a pre-scripted, canned telephone interview. Okay, and now I will say that all 4 of the sitting supervisors did call me. So these were phone interviews, and I felt like they cared, enough to take the time to talk to me. But there's no way of knowing if each one of the 16 or 17 candidates was contacted by each supervisor. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's really no way of knowing. And I don't think it's very transparent doing it that
No.
way. The school board, whenever they lose a board member, Central Dauphin School District Board, they have an open. It's almost like a public interview. Okay,
That's what it is.
it is. It's a public interview, and you go in if you want to be a candidate. And I think the last time there was like 5 candidates, and I actually was one of those 5. Trust me, this isn't something that I do. I just happen to care enough
This
about
is your part-time job.
right. Is losing emergency elections is my part-time job. But what I had to do is I had to prepare. They told me, these are some of the topics we may ask you about.
Right.
Charter schools and budget and I had to prepare for that. And I had to stand in front of the board, 9 members, plus the superintendent, and then all the other people that were in attendance that night, the community members. There was probably another 40 to 60 of them. And the community had to see what each one of us had to offer.
Right.
How we did with the questions, how we interacted with the board. There is none of that going on when they're filling these vacant seats. And the last thing I'll say, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
Before all this started, I told a good friend of mine he's got a kind of an attachment to Lower Paxton Township. He's lived in the township for a long time, and he said, "Don't even bother." I said, "Why? Why shouldn't I even bother?" I said, I've got some energy for this. I care about my township. I think I can make things better. He said they've already selected the person that they're going to have fill the seat. I said, how could they have done that? And he gave me the person's name, and this was weeks before, and it was that person that was selected. Now, that's out of 16 or 17 candidates, okay? So, again, I don't think there's a lot of transparency. I don't think that the way that they go about choosing these vacated, filling the vacated seats is too good, Bill.
No, well, actually, in preparing for this show, I took a look at it comes out of the state, a handbook for township supervisors. The only reason I looked at it was I had a friend who got involved with politics over the last decade or so, and we were talking, and he in our conversation said he had looked at this township handbook, township supervisor handbook, because he was approached about filling one of these open seats. He didn't do it, but I said, okay, I'm going to take a look at this, especially since I was considering applying. And it not too far into the document, it talks about whenever there's a vacancy, you're supposed to hold a public meeting to interview the candidates. And for all the reasons you said, it provides an openness to what you're doing. It's not just behind closed doors. And I think you need to be open, run an open government as much as possible. I mean, there's very few exceptions where you can go into a back room, what they call an executive session, and discuss things like legal matters. If you're having issues with your employees in the township, if you're sued, the township sued, things like that. But there's a very, very small list. So this should all be done out in the open. So you really nailed it there. Now, I had sent an email to all the supervisors over the weekend and said, hey, look, this is what I found. You should be doing this, ideally doing it in a public meeting. A couple of the supervisors got back to me. And in fact, Laura, what's Laura's last name? Laura Kurtz even said that she's going to recommend that they alter this process. Not immediately. I guess they have, in preparedness, they got to run this last seat. You're probably going to use the telephone again. But moving forward, hopefully they're not going to do that. Yeah,
I don't. It was brought up the last meeting I was at in person, where I saw you there, Steve. I don't know, it was 3-4 weeks ago. It was brought up that another person went up to the lectern or the podium and said that they didn't feel it was too. It wasn't too visible the way they were going about it, and or it wasn't transparent, I guess is the term. And that some changes should have been made and should be made. And I saw the couple of the supervisors, they were nodding and agreeing. And but I don't know if I guess if Ms. Kurtz is going to, I think that's an issue to follow up on, though, for somebody to follow up on.
Well, Alan McCormick also said that that's something he would like to do as well. So there's some movement there. with the new people. And that's, I guess, one of the good things that's going to come out of all this hubbub that's happened, starting whenever Robin Lindsay resigned, and all the things that happened following that, is that one, the community is more involved in what's happening. You see it on Facebook, you see it with attendance at the meetings. The public is waking up that there's stuff going on in the township they need to keep in touch with. So that public involvement's a good thing.
That's a great point. I mean, that's a really good point.
And the other thing is that the old guard is no longer, the people that have been holding these offices, the supervisors, the 5 seats, it's completely turned over. Pamela Thompson is in her 2nd year, so she's essentially a rookie herself. Right. So this is a brand new slate of supervisors we're going to get after this thing's all said and done.
I had coffee with Steve this morning, and Steve made a good point. And Bill, I think you've made this exact same point. This should not be, the board should not be political. Okay. Right. It has to, in a sense, because people run as Republicans, they run as Democrats. Right. They kind of wear that label around with them. Okay. I understand that. But Steve, you and I were talking about, we're talking about fixing roads and getting rid of smells and contaminants at compost facilities, and keeping our parks safe. And I could, and clean. Yeah. I could go, Bill and Steve, I could go down 10 or 12 or 20 issues, just like I mentioned 3 or 4. None of them would have an inkling of what should be anything but partisan or bipartisan.
I've thought about this, the only thing that the township has done over the years, and almost every township in the state will do this, and probably across the country, is that when you look at parks and recreation, all right, they opened up the Friendship Center. So that is something that usually the private sector provides. And that you could make that argument. And maybe some of the programs that Parks and Rec runs, they're more social. I mean, you don't have to do that. So that's an option you have. But that's the only thing that smacks of social services. We don't deal with health, and it's just nothing there. It's all just essential things that the public can't provide. Is what the local government's doing.
Right. And the one point that Steve made this morning over coffee was, I forget what exactly we were talking about, but I think Pamela Thompson, she was the only Democrat, and I don't know about the gentleman who just got. I'm
pretty sure he's a Republican.
Okay. And here I am, but I'm not trying to go there, but I have to go there just to talk about it. But like you even said, Steve, that the woman's got some good ideas, and if you're not allowing, let's just say you're a board of 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, or if it were flipped the other way around, if you're not allowing that 5th person to be an equal member, a 20% part of that board, and listening to his or her issues that he or she is bringing to the table, and just saying, let's roll our sleeves up and let's not be political, then you're not serving the taxpayers to the degree or in the fashion that you should be. I mean, Steve, what do you think about that? You're a political guy. You have a party, and
100%. She is literally the only elected official right now of the Board of Supervisors, and there's no question that she should be the chairman of the board. And right now they're not letting her be part of it, and I can understand her frustration. Does she have good ideas? She does, and they need to work a little better together with that. But, Bill, I was listening to you, and, you got a positive attitude towards this whole situation, and I appreciate that. However, let's just get to the facts.
Okay.
The facts. We were trying to avoid the facts, but let's go.
I want the facts. That's great.
There's
dirty dealing going on from the Republican side, and it's just, it is the, I don't want to get into specifics because I don't know if that's proper at this point in time, but, it's just some dirty dealing, backdoor dealings. And, it's very frustrating to know, like the only board member up there, Alan McCormick, he's a nice guy, but he's just being dishonest. He knows the dirty dealings going on. They had this Laura Kurtz picked out, like Joe said, well before well before they even when Mr. Zumas resigned, and and that was just wrong. Or I mean, when Miss Lindsay resigned, they had her in there, and there's reasons for it. There's definitely reasons from the Republican side. The vacancy board. Let's get. Joe was talking about this vacancy board.
Right.
You know, the meeting the other night, Mr. Mosel. You know, you were talking about the old guard. Unfortunately, the old guard's still in charge. Loman Henry, Mr. Mosel. I think the guy's name's Hewlett. You know, those guys have been in charge of the Republican Party in our township for years, and they're still in charge. They're still pulling the strings, and they're the ones who are doing some of these interviews and pulling the strings on this with some other larger donors. And as a Republican, it's just so discouraging to see these backdoor deals going on. The new supervisor, you know, he's an immigrant. Great. I appreciate that. However, he's lived here for 8 years, not even in the township, but in the country. There's people like Joe.
Steve, they changed that. I mean, on the Lower Paxton Township website, they said he immigrated in 2007, and he's been living in Lower Paxton Township for 10 years. That's
18 years in the country, 10 years in the
10 years. Okay, so be it. But there's people out there that lived here 58 years. But my buddy, 55 years. How long you lived here, Bill? Long time.
35.
35, Joe. And I mean, we've seen the problems. We've seen how things work. Some of these supervisors, they talked about the parks the other night. Mrs. Kurtz had to drive around and find the parks. How do you become a supervisor and don't even know where all the parks are? And I guarantee you the new supervisor doesn't know where they are.
I think
and to hear to hear the dirty dealings of how these people are becoming supervisors, you know, again, they're all appointed, and you have to get out and vote. But you know, as a Republican, lifelong Republican, I will do all I can to make sure that some of these people do not win.
I think that kind of takes us back to the way that the vacancies are filled. Like, if everybody had a chance to see the guy that was just what's the term I'm looking for, Bill? He was appointed. He was appointed. Yeah, appointed. And some of the other ones that were appointed in the last couple months, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't have been appointed, but we would have had a chance to see what he looked like versus the other candidates, what she looked like versus the other candidates. Correct.
And you know what? You don't need any credentials to run and win.
Right.
You can be anybody. And if you do the proper things, you run, you get the votes, you win. But
so who has
to get the nomination, or you get the upper hand in the election, because you will get the support of the party.
So help me understand this. My understanding is, I'll say this, and I don't know for sure, that it helps you get a seat when you donate money to the Republican,
Well, I can tell you firsthand, because I have a couple of acquaintances on the Republican, I guess the local committee, that I met at the coffee shop over the years. And the one, whenever I applied on Sunday, I went through my email list and Facebook and sent out some quick messages to people saying, hey, look, I'm apply for this position that Paul Navarro gave up. If you think that I'd be a good fit for this, just send an email to the supervisors. In fact, I sent one to you, Joe.
Yes.
And so the gentleman that's on the committee called me up on Monday morning and actually interviewed me a little bit to find out where I was coming from. And what it came down to, if I wanted his help, I had to go through a endorsement process, interview with the whole committee of the township, the Republican, Lower Paxton Republican Committee. I opted not to do that because I don't want to get involved at that level and be beholden to a local committee or anything like that.
Again, Bill, do you think that's appropriate to have the committee? Well, they shouldn't be making the endorsements. It should be the supervisors looking at the candidates, not the committee. Loman Henry, Mr. Hewlett, and that's.
Well, well, let's be clear. I mean, they're doing nothing wrong. I mean, these people are politically active.
Right.
They want to see their people in office. They're not breaking any laws or being unethical.
That's
So, I made a decision not to go down that path. That's my decision. Will it hurt me? It depends on what the supervisors, how they're approaching it. Are they looking at these candidates one by one without regard to what the Republicans locally are saying, or are they taking orders from the party? I don't know that. I don't know.
So you turn down money, but it also goes the other way around, where candidates pay to get support and to get endorsements.
Well, what I was told was that you have to go and get interviewed by the committee locally, Republicans.
Okay.
If they want to endorse you, that endorsed candidate that they decide on will then talk about the campaign and money and all those things. So you don't have to pay money to sit down with them.
No.
But since I'm not seeking it, I've never been through it. I don't know what they would do with a supervisor's candidate. I do know directly from a candidate locally who lost in the Republican Party in a race recently, that if he would have won, there was an expectation that he raised money for the Dauphin County Republicans, or however they do it. And like our representative, what's our state representative name? Because I'm on the camera, I can't think straight.
Well, Mr. Flynn.
Joe Kerwin. There's an expectation that he raises money for the Republican Party. That's just the way it works locally. But you don't have to pay to get access to them. I just opted not to do it.
Bob Oakes just chimed in here on the thread, the script thread. Ultimately, and I'm quoting Bob here, ultimately you should be endorsed by a political committee if you are going to run after appointment ends.
Well, I don't think you have to do that. It's called a grassroots campaign.
Yeah, he thinks that you should though. That's
I disagree. I respectfully disagree.
So talk about that. We're replacing once this last seat is filled, we're replacing 4 supervisor seats in 3 months. Who has to run again, and when do they have to run?
All of them have to run. This is just a temporary appointment, Joe.
What happens? Do they have to all run in a primary?
Well, I can tell you, I did the research on this. The deadline to apply for the upcoming primary on May 5th has long passed. So there's 2 seats that will appear on the ballot in May. That's for a 6-year term. That would have been Mr. Schuman's seat.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a 2-year one for that would have been who left there? Robin Lindsay.
Yeah, Bill. Okay. It's actually Mrs. Lindsay's 6-year seat, and Mrs. Kurtz is running for that spot. And
when I looked at the county information for the 6-year seat, there's a woman who attended some of these meetings recently. Her name is Kathleen Scheib. She's going to be on the ballot. This thing was not up to date. Do you know, Steve? Is Linda Kurtz running for the six-year seat?
Yeah, Mrs. Kurtz is running for the 6-year seat.
Okay.
And then the 2-year seat is being run by Mr. McCormick.
And then there's a Charles Stewart is also on Charles Stewart has been at some of the meetings.
I think Mr. Scheib is also from the Democrat side. Mr. Stewart is on the Democrat side of the ticket.
Yeah, Charles Stewart is a Democrat.
Good man there.
And Kathleen Scheib is a Democrat also. And Charles has been at some of the. I think he likes to be called Dr. Stewart. He runs the Harrisburg Area Police Athletic League. They have a building off of Locust Lane, I think it is.
Retired military, if I'm remembering correctly, or law enforcement, one of the two.
Yeah, it's online. I just made a note about his police athletic league involvement here in the township.
So, okay, I'm going to ask kind of just like a vague question.
Joe, that's 2 seats, but the gentleman that was just appointed, John Najim, and whoever gets this next seat for Paul Navarro's seat, they're going to I'm told, have to run in the fall.
Yeah, in the fall, correct.
I called the county today to find out how that works, and they didn't call me back. So I guess there's no primary for those two seats. It's just that you apply for that fall election.
So let me ask, Bill, you've been involved in politics, I think longer. I know longer than I have, and probably longer than Steve. And Steve's just, again, I introduced him as a concerned citizen, and that really is.
Well, yeah, I should point out I'm what I would call a local government nerd.
That's why I'm asking you this question.
I've done reporting for 35 years, about 30 years in the area on local governments around the area.
I started with, I talked about, that taxpayers or community members are frustrated. They feel like things haven't been transparent,
right?
Like people aren't listening to their needs or their concerns. If somebody at home is watching this, what's the best way for them to kind of, there's no magic wand. You can't just go barreling in the next board meeting and, what's the best way for somebody to go, all right, I've had enough. What do I do now?
Yeah, I think the worst place to go is Facebook. You can put it out there, but you're not going to get any resolution.
Right.
Recently if you go on the township website, you can get the email addresses for individual supervisors, and they have an email address that goes to all supervisors. So you can do, and I've had good luck here in the last few weeks talking to them via email. Of course, you can attend the meetings and speak in public comment, and as you did one meeting, Joe, you can go up and talk to them after the meeting.
Right.
Want to get some FaceTime with the supervisor.
Yeah, I walked up after one of the meetings. I talked to, I think, every one of them. There were 4 at the time, and they all sat there and listened to my concerns, and I shook their hand and I thanked them for their service and what have you. But I think it's important that people don't relent. Okay. Right. And I'm not asking anybody to get, to walk in there all peed off or ticked off and let things go out of the side of their neck. But when I say not relent, I mean keep showing up, keep signing up to speak.
That's what Steve did.
Yeah. And that's why I had Steve on tonight.
If you come to the meetings or even watch them on TV,
you
see the dysfunctionality of the board. Now, maybe it might get better, but you still got the township manager in there that is truly a real problem, and it won't take you long to realize that he's down in it.
Well, we should talk about the township manager. I have some stuff I can share with you guys.
Let's do that. And his name is Mr. Brad Gottschall.
Bradley Gottschall, yes.
Yeah.
He was hired in October of 2018. So he's been here, 6-7 years already.
Yes.
And he had big shoes to fill, as we mentioned earlier. George Wolf was 28 years as the township's manager, was here during the big growth spurt. I mean, the supervisors during his reign, especially the last 20 years, I mean, they could really rely on George to be on top of things, to guide them through and explain what they were dealing with in any given meeting. So whenever George earned his retirement and went on his way, they had big shoes to fill. Okay. The township at the time was Loman Henry was the chairman. In a report that I did on this hiring, I believe I did it. They spent 6 months trying to fill this position.
Okay.
And I can understand it's a tough position to fill.
It is. It's
a big job.
It's a tough job. I was just talking to Steve about that this morning over coffee. I said I think Mr. Gottschall is a bright man.
Right.
I think, and that's why I wanted to lead with, how large geographically the township is, how many, the population. I don't think it's an easy job, but you know what? He just chimed in actually just this second. I saw Brad Gottschall says, sounds like you need to have the township manager guy on the podcast to provide an alternative view. We'd love to.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mr. Gottschall, thank you for reaching out, speaking up, and we'd love to have you on.
Go ahead, Steve.
Gottschall couldn't do the job. I think the supervisors need to rein him in a little bit and get him focused on what needs to be done, and they just didn't do it.
Why don't we this is a great time to kind of segue away from this, because we just got Mr. Gottschall a commitment. We could do it next week.
Oh yeah, the other thing I'd look forward to talking to Mr. Gottschall about is that, like me, he's a local government nerd. He was he at 18 years of age was a borough councilman in Frackville, Pennsylvania, in Schuylkill County,
Right.
and held a couple manager jobs in smaller boroughs, two of them, before he came to Lower Paxton. So he made a huge jump from the small borough environment to what we have here in terms of number of employees and all that. So, but we'll let him tell the story when he comes on.
Okay. So yeah, the best I can say is that I know that people have been frustrated, and it hasn't been just with Mr. Gottschall. It's been with the board, Mr. Gottschall, the interaction amongst them, and we're going to find out more about that. His perspective, and if we're going to be fair here on this and that,
sure,
we want to get the perspective of all parties, or different parties, and that's what we'll do next week. So thank you again, Mr. Gottschall, for chiming in, and we look forward to having you next week. So, what else didn't we discuss here with regards to? I know that. Can we just kind of go down a different path here for a moment? Let's talk about Colonial Park Mall, because we're not going to be able to dedicate a whole show to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just something, though, people want to know. Like they wanted to know about Coons Pool last week, and we did a great job of delivering some information last week. I thought we have close to 1,700 views from last week's show talking about Coons Pool. But a lot of people want to know what's going on with Colonial Park Mall. I mean, it's kind of smack dab, maybe not right in the middle of the township, because it's not geographically, but it is. It's kind of like, has been a focal point of what many Lower Paxtonians have done for many years, was to go to that mall, whether they were shopping, hanging out, trying to pick up boys or girls when they were younger. Senior citizens walked in there. It's just been a very integral part of this community in this township. And now it's up for sale again. Is that correct? That
is correct. What was reported at a recent meeting, I think there were some questions about the mall. They want to sell the mall. Now, it's not the outlying buildings, like the long
Sears, Boscov's.
The jewelry store, the Longhorn Steak,
right?
Boscov, Sears, all it's just the main mall.
Red Lobster, we may as well mention that too, because that's kind of there's like 5 adjacent buildings that are not part of the mall.
Right. The current owner apparently still wants to put a trampoline park in the section that used to be the Bonton, but he's trying to peddle the rest of it off, because I'm not sure. It didn't, based on what was said at a recent meeting, it didn't sound like the mall, that the new owner was fully apprised of what the township was trying to do with that mall. And what happened over recent years, they changed the zoning, or what you could use it for, to expand out what you could do with it beyond just stores. It could be apartments or office buildings. Offices, a church, meeting, places to gather and for the public to gather. So they're looking to more of a neighborhood type scenario that they will allow to happen if the right person comes in. I talked to one of the volunteer officials of the township, and he gave me a few insights in that there's township officials have tried to get all the various parties together that are involved there, the owners of the outlying buildings, the Sears people, Boscov's, and see if they can work together towards getting a new owner, a new thing going there. But apparently that's been very, very difficult to get all those parties together. The Sears ownership, whoever owns that was pointed out, was one that maybe is tough to work with. So they haven't been able to get it done.
So several meetings ago, Representative Fleming came to me.
Right.
And he said we can get some state money in regards to revitalization of that mall.
Right.
But I mean, I truly, it's been now several years to sit there. I don't see that coming back as a viable mall, or as a situation as sits, to be quite honest, as a citizen community.
I think that's why they changed the zoning, so it gave a possibility of more uses than just a regular mall as we grew up with.
That's probably for another show. And I'm not saying we can't talk about it now, but malls are kind of dying in this
Yeah,
country. I heard capital city's doing great, but that
yeah,
doesn't mean because they are that everybody is. East Mall's gone. Colonial Park is all but gone. And if I look at myself, and I'm an average consumer. Um, I do two things. I shop online a great deal, and I want to pull right up to a strip mall, to a shop like a Dick's Sporting Goods, pull right up front, walk in and walk out. I don't want to park and have to walk across a parking. And I'm not lazy. I exercise every day. I walk and I hike. But when I'm shopping, I'm not there to walk and hike. I want to get in and I want to get out. And I think that a combination of things, big box stores and a combination of things have just kind of made malls all but a thing of the past. So I'd be interested, maybe Mr. Gottschall, we don't want to kind of pelt him with too much stuff next week, but what he's hearing, I don't want to say behind the scenes because that's probably not for us to know if it's truly behind the scenes, but he has to know what some of the ideas that have been proposed. And I think people are getting tired of, and I love this township. I've lived here my whole life. I went off to college for a few years. I moved across the river for about 2 years. So I've lived here almost, for about 50 years. So I like it a lot, and that's why I stay here. But is anybody else? You guys are long time Lower Paxton. Anybody else tired of chicken restaurant, car wash, chicken restaurant?
Here's the thing. I hear a lot of people talking about that, but what you have to understand that the township doesn't directly control what goes in. You have private property owners.
I understand that.
If 6 chicken places want to come in and change Route 22 into Chicken Way,
they're able to.
You can't.
I totally get it. I really do. So there's no kind of
what they can do, Joe. Sometimes Chamber of Commerce, or you have an economic development corporation.
That's what I'm kind of thinking about.
What they do is go out and try and recruit
or
find suitable people or companies to come in and populate these main corridors like that.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that anything is actively happening. And again, that's a tough part about township government. It's not the second-class township. We are we almost should be a first-class township for representation purposes, because when you go first class, then there's wards or sections of the township that you represent. You don't, as a supervisor, you don't represent the whole thing. So there's some problems structurally with the way that the way it's set up, because it's just difficult. There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and thank you for making that clear. Go ahead, Steve.
In regards to what you were saying, Joe, I think some of these places aren't realizing they're going to be as busy as they expected, because living right close to all that, those places aren't as busy as I think they thought.
Well, it's like Bill was saying, it's their money.
You're right.
And I listen, Steve, I'm not setting you straight here at all. I'm just saying that it's their money to invest how they want. And I don't expect that the board or Bradley Gottschall to be able to, again, I'm going to use the term magic wand again, and just kind of magically, put all the stores and restaurants that I'd like to have put in,
Well, Joe, here's the thing. I mean, I would imagine as these projects come through, sometimes the township officials will say, why is this happening? But they can't just out of hand reject them, because if they're following the rules and they reject them, they get sued.
Absolutely.
You can't do that.
I understand that, and I agree with that. I wouldn't want to be rejected if I wanted to put in a car wash. Hell, I might want to put a car wash that has a chicken restaurant attached to it, and that would be my right, grab some chicken while your car's being washed. All right,
great idea, Joe. You should be an entrepreneur.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Anybody else have anything for the good?
Let's see. I'll do a quick check of my notes here.
Steve, do you have notes, or do you have anything that you?
Nope. I'm good. I'll be looking forward to next show. Well,
yeah, it should be interesting for sure. And that's one of the things we want to do here on This and That, the podcast. First of all, the reason that we call it This and That is because it's really going to be about this and that. This isn't all going to be. I mean, our first two shows and now our third one, it looks as though are all going to be kind of like government related, or Coons Pool wasn't truly government related, but there were kind of some things connected to it that might have had to do with the township. But we are going to kind of loosen things up a little bit here. We're going to do some arts and leisure stuff, and we're going to have some Central Pennsylvania musicians come on. We're going to do some public service type shows.
I do have one thing to wrap up with before you sign off. I had looked at just what are some potential steps that people can take in this, to move the township out of this malaise that we've been in. And
what malaise? The malaise with the board not getting along, and losing supervisors,
meetings being a fiasco, bickering back and forth, and all that. And I think
that malaise.
Tuesday night's meeting was a step in the right direction. I think
Good,
they got
good.
At least in my view, as I looked at it. But I mean, a lot of these issues are going to have to be worked out by the supervisors trying to determine what to do. They may need it, depending on what they find. They may need to seek some outside help. The state government has a Department of Community and Economic Development, and they have government services there that they might be able to get some help, possibly. And then there's a Township Supervisors Association that might be able to help them out if they run into problems. So, I mean, this is not that unusual. There's all across the state. As I do my work for a news company, you hear about all these issues popping up.
Absolutely. That's why I said
everywhere.
I led with that. It's not unprecedented. I think
not.
it's
a little bit unusual to have 4 or 5.
Right.
But that it does happen. The other thing people can do is gear up for this election and really take it seriously, starting with the primary when it comes to the supervisor picks. Next Wednesday, the 16th at 7:00, there's a candidates night at Linglestown Fire Company in the old building, where the local candidates, like probably the county, township candidates, are going to be invited in, so you can meet with them and hear what they have to say.
Will there be Danish and coffee there, Bill?
Well, if they want to get a crowd, they should do that.
Yeah. They should have Danish and coffee, right?
Yeah.
And before we finish here, I want to be clear about something else. We care. We're doing this because we care. Steve cares. I know he does. Steve and I did not have a conversation about how can we go on there tonight and be rabble rousers and kind of throw people under the bus. It's let's find a solution here, and it's going to take for everybody to be part of that solution. The taxpayers, the board, other employees at the township, and I'm not saying that employees at the township aren't doing a great job, but if there's 100 employees there, everybody's better served when they have great employees and they're doing great things, for us.
Yeah. So that pretty much puts a wrap on it, I think.
Okay. So Steve Blaine, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
How are the roads out there? Are they good now?
They're gotten better, but
okay. All right.
Still not.
Okay, so now we know about that for sure. Whoever didn't knows about that. Bill, thank you for being our co-host for tonight, and hopefully moving forward you'll be able to move into that role on a permanent basis.
Okay. Sure.
And we want to thank we also want to thank Rickabaw's Electric, Dan Rickabaugh at Rickabaw's Electric. He is a Linglestown Gazette Sports longtime sponsor, and his kids went to Central Dauphin schools. He's a sponsor of this show here now, as is Team PA AAU basketball. And if you don't have a kid that plays basketball and you need to rent a car, the Cavolis, Greg and Andrea, also own Enterprise Rent-A-Car on North Mountain Road. Go rent your car there. They take really good care. And, you might think, oh, it's just a car. No, when I rented a car there, the guy took me outside. He showed me where everything was on the dashboard. I mean, they did a great job. So thank you to those two local businesses for supporting us. So
yeah, and as a teaser, Joe, I have a great story out of my archives when I was writing stories about West Hanover Township that has to do with switching things around with supervisors. that if it's a township oriented show next week, I would love to share it, because you think things have been bad around here. Wait till you hear this story.
Okay. So I want to thank Don Lynch. Thank you for the kind words. Don Lynch is watching. He was my boss, and he trained me at my last jobs at Cisco, and a very good friend of mine. So we appreciate you watching. And Jeff Clare, thank you. And Bradley Gutschall, Township Manager, thank you very much for chiming in. And we will be in touch. I'll send you an email, Mr. Gutschall, and we'll try to come up with a day next week. Usually we do it on a Monday through Thursday kind of thing, but I'll try to fit it in whenever Bill and I can. So that's it, fellas. Thank you very much. We didn't save the world, but hopefully some people that are watching or will watch or become more abreast of the issues, and hopefully they get involved more. You know, that's what it's all about. Let's all be responsible for our township, and let's try to be as positive as we can about it. We have new faces on the board. Let's support them. Let's give them the opportunity to have a fresh start and put some of the things behind them, and for us to put some of our feelings behind us and be open-minded to them doing a great job for us all. So thank you to Steve Blaine and my co-host Bill Bostic, and we'll see you next week. Have a great evening, everyone.
See you later.
All right.
See you, Joe.